Hello there, and welcome to A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. And although there is the image behind me, implying that we watched this on the TV, we did in fact see this in the cinema. So it's another cinema viewing of the newly released new live-action associated prequel adaptation, whatever you want to call it, Cruella. Which, I have to say, I've had a really difficult relationship with the live-action Disney stuff in the last couple of years. These sort of prequels or adaptations. Initially I was really on board. I still think that Cinderella, by Kenneth Branagh directed Cinderella, is a very good film. I genuinely think it's a very good Shakespearean injected adaptation of that story, and really gives it a sense of personality and context, and builds it in a way that makes it different from the original, gives it a very different feel and style. And so from that point on, I was entirely on board with the idea of sort of taking some of the more classic ones and doing something different with them. You know, Maleficent, for instance. I know that the Sleeping Beauty film has a difficulty, which is its lead actress is asleep she's asleep for a lot of the film, and she has like a handful of lines even when she's awake. And I know that doesn't play well. She is one of the few Disney princesses who hasn't kind of gone full circle in respect of being initially criticised and then people kind of pulling back on their criticisms. She is one case where it's like, no, this one doesn't do so well because she doesn't have autonomy. So the Maleficent adaptation seemed like such a good idea, a villain-centric adaptation, a re-contextualising, and of course Angelina Jolie really does carry that film. It's a strange film. It is a very strange film with considering it is still a Disney film and, still is trying to appeal or bring the magic of Disney to a new generation of children. The themes and ideas that Maleficent is trying to discuss, particularly the subtext of rape that is within the film, is a little intense for the market. But as someone who isn't the market, who is a bit older, I rather liked it. I thought it was an interesting take. I don't think it entirely worked, but I thought it was an interesting take. Cut to, the next half-decade of now direct adaptations of Disney films. And as opposed to taking the more obscure or the ones that are older and could do with that, a reviewing, the direction they decided to go through is to take the most popular Disney films over the past 50, 60 years and adapt them. So of course we had Beauty and the Beast. Of course we've had, most painful of all for me, Lion King. And the Lion King was my final straw, the point in which I no longer wanted to watch any more of these. And I just was like, I was insulted by that film. And I know technically it's not live action. It's not live action, but it's within the spirit of that live action style. And I was really, really foot down, not happy. I absolutely believe that this was the point in which I was starting to I was just going to avoid them. And then this came, and it was such a strange idea, because Maleficent, though, a proper, grassroots Disney villain, is the kind of character who we don't know much about, who could be restructured and sort of seen through a different lens. But Cruella de Vil is a woman whose sole motivation in the original story, and of course the animated version and the Glenn Close version, she wants to kill dogs. And I have to say, that is an incredibly hard sell, to make a woman who wants to murder dogs as her primary motivation the lead of your next Disney film. And then there started strange things, Emma Stone's attachment, the fact that it's directed by Craig Gillespie, who people would know from I, Tonya. It developed this very... And then once they started releasing the look of it, it was a really strange looking film. And I was like, what is this going to be? It's got, you know, this sort of 70s feel to it. It does feel like authentic London. What is this going to turn out to be? Well, I have to say, I'm impressed. I have to say, regardless of the the things that are positive and negative about it, it is a film that makes you forget the fact that this is, well, being a prequel, the fact that you are following a woman who will one day become someone who wants to murder dogs. Not only that, but I think it does do some interesting re-examinations of our understanding of her character. I don't think it entirely works. I will confess there are things... It's a conflicted narrative, because I think it wants to lean into the villainous, campy, over-the-top style of the character. You know, that the character fills the screen, you know. And, I mean, frankly, in every adaptation, she completely overshadows most of the other, at least human cast, because, you know, she honestly feels like she's in a, you know, her own movie. I mean, the big problem with 102 Dalmatians, amongst its many problems, is the fact that she's practically the protagonist, even though she's the villain. And so they really find, you know, they really want to lean into that. The problem, I suppose, is the fact that it's sort of serving two masters in that respect, in terms of it wants her to be the villainous Cruella that we know, but it also wants us to have her as the protagonist, and it sort of grapples with that. It does do some interesting, like I say, like with Maleficent, it does some interesting recontextualization of certain things. I mean, minor spoilers because it's within the first section of the film, but how her mother dies involving these Dalmatians is actually genuinely quite shocking, and is a really sort of a good first strike of how a character becomes the way they are, and it gives you a really interesting perspective on why she has such a bitter relationship with the dogs. Now, that's a very superficial sort of aspect of it, but again, it does reframe the character just a little bit. And so you have this strange character who, I mean, the film as a whole, just to sort of take a step back, it's essentially The Devil Wears Prada, slightly hybridized with Basic Instinct, or by way of Basic Instinct, or Cruel Intentions, perhaps, maybe might be a better comparison. And then it has these sort of heist elements to it, and it has this sort of punk 70s aesthetic, which is almost perfect for the Cruella character. It fits her personality so well, and you know, the counterculture of that time really suits a young Cruella. It makes sense that this woman essentially came into age during this time period, you know, this period in fashion, but this period in music and just culture generally. It makes perfect sense that this is a product of that she becomes a product of that. And I honestly do think Emma Stone, you know, I've seen an interview with her where she says she didn't rewatch she's never seen the Glenn Close one, and she didn't rewatch the animated one because she wanted to create her own version of it. And yet she manages to, I don't know whether it's through sort of osmosis or what, but she, you know, there is something of the Glenn Close and there is something of the animated version. You know, there is this sense of this character who has, you know, all of those layers to her in a proto sense. It's a strange film in respect of, there is almost like I say, there's the Devil Wears Prada aspect to it, but then there's also, there's something almost Superman about it. It's interesting. I kept thinking about the Kill Bill thing, Kill Bill Volume 2, where Bill talks about Superman and his whole thing about how Superman is his real personality and Clark Kent is his reflection on what he thinks humanity is. And it is supposed to be insulting. It's supposed to be the idea that Clark Kent, Superman sees humans as fumbling and weak and embarrassing. I don't agree with that. I'm frustrated by the fact that so many people discuss that like it is a valid thing to discuss, but at the same time, I get very frustrated when analysts and film commentators take something like that and take it something that's being said by a villain and use it as a debatable statement. And it's like, no, it is still being said by a villain, and so therefore villains manipulate our understanding of truth. But that being said, if you actually transpose that Superman ideology onto Cruella, the fact that you have Estella first, well, you don't. You have the child Cruella who then becomes Estella to try and become more fitting in with society, and then comes back round to being Cruella, and it's the conflict between her Estella personality that she's created and her true nature, Cruella, and which one is the real one, Estella or Cruella, and which one is the performance. And I honestly think that's a really interesting conflict for a character. I do think that's because leaving the film, you go, well, which one was real and which one was the performance? And I'm fairly sure I have my version of the answer, but I have already seen, and I'm confident others would feel the opposite. And then on top of that, you've got Horace and Jasper, played by Joel Flynn and... Oh, well, who is it again? Joel Fry, sorry.
Paul Walter Hauser.
And Paul Walter Hauser. Joel Fry is a funny actor. He keeps popping up all over the place. But he is really good in this, actually. And there is something heartbreaking about him, because he's a character who clearly is the one who is in love with Estelle, and actually becomes more Cruella-like. You watch his heart break as he tries to connect to her and still be the heart of their little team. And it's honestly, the three of them are really good together. They make a good heist, because there is this whole heist aspect of this film, and that works so well as well. It bleeds together really well with all the other things going on. And then of course you have Emma Thompson, who plays the Baroness, who is this Cruella before Cruella, and the fact that she's so psychotic. Like I say, there is something Basic Instinct about her. There's something where it's like, oh, is she just cruel and manipulative and sociopathic, or is she actually a stone cold killer? And the fact that you aren't sure throughout the film, and like I say, it sort of has the Meryl Streep Devil Wears Prada thing on, sort of mixed in with that personality. You genuinely, she's a great villainous foil. And again, it means that Estelle, Cruella, whichever version, it means that you can sympathise with her, because this character is so much more villain. It is a different kind of villain. And you can see also how her personality and her style starts to affect Estella and starts to sort of change her. I mean, as I did with my Devil Wears Prada video, commented on the fact that, that kind of story should be about how these things change you, like, irreversibly. And my big criticism of that film was the fact that it then, towards the end of the film, started to walk it back. This does something different, but it does have that element of, like, how someone is being changed by, specifically the fashion industry. But as their, this personality starts to magnetize their personality, I do think they have such a good dynamic between the two of them. And so it has all of these elements, and it is complicated. It's a strange, complicated film that has a lot of personality to it, and I cannot criticise it for being too ambitious, because at the end of the day, I'd rather see a film that's too ambitious and doesn't quite work than one that's boring because it didn't try anything new. And this is definitely something that tries something new. The main things, I think, the criticisms I have are, one, amongst all the cast, it has Mark Strong as well. And unfortunately, Mark Strong does have a sort of prominent role. He is essential, but his character is very backdrop, and I cannot abide seeing Mark Strong wasted. He's such a good actor, and he's a bigger actor than the role he is given necessitates. It feels like he's being limited and he's so much bigger of an actor than that role allows. I also think the film's too long. I do think it's too long, and because it's got all of these elements, it means it can be a little unfocused in places, and it's trying to do so much that with the running time, it can be very hard to keep track of what's going on, and in terms of theme, in terms of relationships, and it does mean you start to tire, even though there's nothing in the film that means it should tire you. You know, it just rattles on so well, but it's so long that you can't help but start to be a bit like, oh, you know, when are we going to get to a climax on this? But otherwise, I do think this was, yes, I really enjoyed this. I thought this was a wild fun time. I do wonder, being my third cinema viewing, whether this was always going to be the problem returning to cinemas, that I am now being influenced by the fact I finally get to be in theatres again. And because I am loving it, but it means I'm possibly being more generous to films than I might have been were I to watch them at home. Or if I had watched tons and tons of films in the theatre during this series. But I can't sort of analyse that too deeply, because I just frankly don't know. I'll know the more cinema viewings I go to. But I did have a cracking good time. It was a fun film, and it was worth seeing in the theatre. So, yeah, really fun. Surprised the heck out of me, and I'd rather see more of these sorts of films than, I don't know, remakes of any of the other classic Disney that they definitely have lined up on the docket. Anyway, thank you for joining me. If you like this video, hit the like button, comment below, and share the video, because it's all helping the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell to get notifications of when new videos are uploaded. Check out my back catalogue of over 150 videos, and follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley, where I'm always tweeting about TV shows and films, and I share these videos once they're uploaded to YouTube either the day of or the day after. Thank you for joining me. Take care.